there is something I love about Plato, and there's something I mildly resent about Plato. And book one of the Republic is where both of these feelings slap me in the face. I know when I just went through book one, my first thought was, what did I get myself into committing to this book again? I mean, of course, as a humanities professor, I've read this book multiple times, but even for this series that we're getting into, I'm reading it again. Book one is dense. It's messy. It's frustrating, but strangely in a good way, I think, in my opinion. But you know what? Good. Plato wants it that way, so let's just take on the challenge. If your brain hurts a little reading it, that's not failure. That's your mind lifting its first few weights. That's intellectual soreness in a good kind of way, and the kind you can hopefully, and you will hopefully, brag about later on. And before I get too far, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. David Hopkins. I am a humanities professor going on almost 25 years teaching, lecturing, advising, administrating across the spectrum of higher education. Even spent some time in academic publishing along the way, but my heart, my passion is the humanities. Always was once I got out of the Army and went to college. And well, here we are today. I'm glad you're joining me for this 10-part series. Love it. Love that you're here. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's the deal. Before we can dive into one of the key topics of this chapter, justice, and understand justice as we eavesdrop into a conversation about it, we have to understand the people that are holding this debate, holding this argument, because the Republic, it's not really about a theory. It's not about some lecture trying to make you believe something. It's actually a conversation. It's a conversation among human beings. They're sometimes flawed, they're funny, sometimes loud, obnoxious, worried, proud human beings at times. So let's first just step into the scene that we're getting in book one. So picture this. Picture Greece, Mediterranean climate. See a winding, dusty road. You can feel the harbor air, smell the oil lamps, get a sense of the characters that are the center of the book at this point. I mean, really, think of this book this way. You're listening in on a group of people's conversation, but in this case, it isn't about some ex-boyfriend or Netflix series or the meal you ate last week. It's about a deep conversation, because Plato's not building arguments. Not yet. He's not. He's building a world that looks eerily, as you're going to find out, a lot like our own. So let's have a look down the Piraeus. Oh, and hey, Greek scholars, forgive the pronunciation etiquette. Look, here's the deal. I'm doing my best, but this isn't college, and I'm not a language scholar. So if you want, give me a call at 1-800-I-DON'T-CARE. Leave me a message with your concerns. Sorry about that, but hey, sometimes people just, well, how do I say this nice? Miss the whole damn point of what I'm doing here. I have time in my life and to podcast, focus on a few other things. And in an ideal world, I'd surely be able to research every damn name and every pronunciation and be flawless in my Greek eloquence. But here's the honest truth. I'm a humanities guy. I just don't care for that minutia anymore. Okay, sorry for the sidetrack, but I had to get that out there early. Now back to the regularly scheduled podcast. So we begin not in a classroom in book one, but in a city, and not just any city, Athens, Greece, around 430 BC. Athens at this moment is the intellectual superpower of the ancient world. It also, though, exhausted by war, plague, political tension, all the good stuff. Think of a brilliant nation that's also deeply insecure and struggling. If Athens had a Facebook profile, the tagline might be, it's complicated. Now imagine the camera panning downward, literally downward, because that's what Plato writes. He writes, quote, "We went down to the Piraeus, down from the quiet, polished marble heart of Athens, the kind you see in the postcards, to this loud, muscular port city. It's the place where philosophy kind of meets real life. And the Piraeus, listen, the place is kind of wild. I mean, imagine Times Square meets Miami nightlife, but with more goats, vendors yelling, children darting around legs, torches flickering, drums pounding, sailors shouting, foreign languages mixing in the air because there's a very cosmopolitan area at the time, boats creaking in the harbor, and smells that's, well, let's just call it historically authentic. It's a festival of Bendis, a Thracian goddess. So you've got Greek sophistication here, and it's blended with kind of foreign religion, old traditions meeting new influences, culture trying to figure out what it wants to become. I mean, sound kind of familiar, really? It's very cosmopolitan melting pot. And Socrates and Glaucon have come down to just watch and take in the festivities. They enjoy themselves, but it gets later in the evening, and by this time they've seen enough, and they start to head back up toward the city. Probably, I mean, if I could imagine it, hoping for a quiet night. But trouble enters the scene and kind of has a way of finding these guys, as it always seems to find Socrates all the time. And so just as they're leaving, another group approaches them, and it's led by Polemarchus and his buddies. And listen, these guys aren't violent, no, but they're incredibly insistent. Polemarchus calls out to Socrates, Socrates, you must stay. I need you to come talk with us, speak with us, and either prove you're stronger than us. Because if you don't, you're going to have to stay here. And of course, Socrates, by this time, he's an older man. He just kind of laughs. He's in sandals and a thin little robe. He's not winning any physical contests against these younger guys. So he grins and he says, well, then I guess we just must stay. And just like that, through a friendly ambush, the greatest philosophical conversation in Western history begins. I mean, really, you can't plan for conversations like this. You don't schedule them between errands. The conversation, in this case, it just sort of arrives the same way trouble can sometimes, in a moment that interrupts Socrates' plans, but he rolls with it. Plato wants you to know this right away. We don't go out looking for in-depth, detailed philosophical conversations. But the reality is philosophy can jump us in a parking lot and say, sit down, we need to talk for a second. And this time, we're brought into a conversation with Socrates and this other group. So, as you continue reading, the group leads them into the home of Cephalus. And this is where the scene shifts. The noise of the harbor fades away. The torches are further away. Imagine in your mind, the drums are getting softer. Now you're inside the house of a wealthy Athenian. Oil lamps are glowing. Bronze shields hang on the wall. You can almost smell the olive oil, the incense. Servants move quietly, serving wine. The courtyard opens up to the night sky. I mean, it's peaceful. It's orderly. It's comfortable. I mean, this is the perfect backdrop for the first definition of justice. Just a very simple, respectable, untested. And so here comes the characters, and you need to know these people because Cephalus, he is the elder statesman. He has imagine a white beard, a warm smile, wealthy, but calm about it. Kind of grandfather figure who's in a way earned his place at the head of the table. He's lived a decent life. He's not perfect, of course, but he's honest. He's seen enough of the world to want two things. He wants peace and a clean conscience. So Cephalus represents traditional, conventional, conservative, respectable morality. The pay your bills, tell the truth, be a good neighbor version of justice. That kind of stuck in the old ways, happy in the old ways, wants the old ways just to continue. And then you got another guy, Polemarchus, and Polemarchus is Cephalus's son. He's very young. He's energetic. He's confident. Now, when I say very young, I don't mean like he's a preteen or a prepubescent boy. I mean, he's a man, but he's got a vibe of a guy who's read maybe a couple philosophy scrolls and now considers himself a thought leader. You know, the kind, young, strong, bulletproof, the kind of confident kid that thinks he has the world all figured out and is just absolutely stunned that older, more seasoned, more mature adults don't know anything. It's absolutely amazing to him. We probably all know someone like this. He's likable, but he's also certain. All right, I'll be even more direct. For me, he comes across as cocky and arrogant. But the fun part is that certainty and arrogance in position is something Socrates just loves to test. And we will learn through this book, considering that if you consider yourself 100% certain and set in your ways, it's often, almost always, it's not a sign of intellectual strength, but rather it's a sign of a weaker mind. Another character sitting around there is Thrasymachus. Now we get to the heavyweight, right? The Thrasymachus is a professional rhetorician. I guess you could say he's the ancient equivalent of a cable news commentator, TikTok debater, UFC fighter, all rolled up into one kind of person. That should give you like a description of him. Plato describes him often as rising like a wild beast, thick arms, sharp eyes, a presence that says, I didn't come here to talk. I came here to win. He's the voice of raw cynicism, as we're going to find out, the guy who sees through everyone's BS, but never stops to ask whether seeing through everything is the same as understanding anything. And then we have our main man, Socrates, and he's the guide. He's the mentor. He's the teacher of Plato who wrote this book, The Republic. He's actually a cornerstone of philosophical thought and an icon of Western philosophy, but he surely doesn't look the part. If you want to get a picture of probably what he looked like, he was probably barefoot, plain cloaked, calm eyes. He's the kind of man that, you know, if you were in a big crowd, people would probably ignore him. But then he opens his mouth and the whole room shifts. He's the philosopher who claims to know nothing and yet somehow always seems to make the experts sweat. So, Cephalus, he's the first one. He's the head of the household. He talks first. So as they all take their seats and they begin to talk, and the conversation just nonchalantly is kind of veers towards the concept of justice. And Cephalus, being the kindly elder, he opens the conversation and he says, justice just means living a good life, a moral life. And really justice is simple at its core. You know, basically just tell the truth, pay your debts. And I mean, that definition, right? We can get that. We can grasp that. It's so simple and it's so clean. And for someone like Cephalus, it just sounds right. But most people today actually still think this way. You know, it's, if you ask someone on the street, you know, what What's it mean to lead a just life? And a lot of people will just say, don't lie, don't steal, uh, don't cheat people, fulfill your obligations, be a quote unquote good person. It's very comfortable morality, right? Morality you can kind of knit into a pillow and lay your head down and say, I'm a good person. It's a statement you hear all the time, lots of times. Hear this when someone's asked about religion often here in our modern world. I don't believe in God, but I am a really good person. So what does that mean? What does that actually mean? It's so vague, so broad. I mean, in general, you get it, right? And if you're one that says this, I just want to challenge you on something. Build a framework around this. If you are religious, the framework is naturally built into the faith. In Christianity, you've got the Bible. If you want to be a Christian will say, hey, you want the rules, how to live a good, just, exceptional life? Read the Bible, follow the Bible. But if you're not one of those people, let's say you're an atheist, agnostic, or you're still just trying to figure stuff out, I challenge you, go deeper than just be a good person. You really need to go deeper than that. So Socrates, he hears Cephalus say this, and it isn't good enough for Socrates either. It can't hold weight. So Socrates, pretty allergic to the very simple answers, he asks one question, just one. And Cephalus's whole argument collapses. So here's what Socrates says. He says, Cephalus, that's interesting, that's good. But if a sane man lends you weapons and then later demands them back when he is insane, or crazy in the head, we could say, or angry, should you give them back to him? Would returning them be just? Then the room goes quiet. We need to linger here just a second. See, Socrates is trying to divine something big, justice, not from a simple superficial sense, but from a deep moral meaning. I mean, in the world of Cephalus, yes, of course, he should give the enraged man back his weapon, his enraged or insane man back his weapon, because if he borrowed it as a quote unquote just person, he should just give it back because the weapon wasn't his. But are there times, maybe, just maybe, it would be better to tell a lie, just a little white lie, do something like, oh yeah, sure, I would love to give you those weapons back right now, but I lent them to my cousin, so let me see if I can get them back for you. Or are there scenarios where stealing something or cheating could potentially be justified? I mean, think about it. You're a parent. You have no food. Your child is starving to death. Is that okay to try and get food, even if it requires cheating or stealing something? I mean, according to Cephalus, no, you can't do that. You would be unjust. See, this is where Socrates is going with Cephalus in posing this type of question to him. Because the hypothetical does what philosophy always does. It breaks the comfortable story in order to build a much deeper story. And Cephalus looks at Socrates. He then looks at the floor and then decides he has somewhere else to be. He isn't curious enough or interested enough to go deeper in his old age. He's sort of like, yeah, dude, how about you just let me be? I'm happy enough where I'm at and what I believe. So he excuses himself to go make some religious offerings and he exits the conversation. Stage left, bye-bye, Cephalus. So symbolically, he leaves the world of questioning, the world of difficulty. the world of intellectual strength. And I'm going to pause right here. Here's the deal in our modern world. We live in a very social media, quick hit, easy answer, easy solution. Our politicians even say, well, solving this problem is really that easy. No, it's not. No, it's not. Complex problems are not easily solved with one sentence responses. But I guess back to Cephalus, what you could say is like, look, bro, great talk. I'm old. I'm content. I'm happy. And I'm not at all interested in deeply actually exploring this question. So peace out. Have fun. I'm going back to my TikTok stream. I'll stay in my comfortable little world. That's kind of where Socrates pushes off Cephalus in this part of the debate. So after Cephalus kind of dips out gracefully and politely, like a man excusing himself from a dinner table right before someone brings up politics, and honestly, who can blame him? He's at the end of his life. He's had a good life. He's probably had wonderful things, and he's probably had horrible things and tough things, and he just wants to keep things simple. And in his mind, he's earned his comfort, not interested in going deeper. But the moment he leaves, that's when things start to get a little more interesting, because now it's Polemarchus's turn. And see, Polemarchus is that guy at the table who can't help himself. There are people, man, that just have to have an opinion on everything, and not just have an opinion on everything, but they always have the right answer to everything. He hears this argument from his dad, and he has to fill the silence with something, and preferably something he thinks sounds incredibly profound. And listen, he's not a bad guy. He's not. He's just young. He's young at age. Again, like that bulletproof age where you have everything all figured out completely, and confident, so confident, in fact, that there isn't a way for him to not think he isn't right. He has the world all figured out. And so, of course, he's very sure he knows what justice is, which makes the next part especially good. So Polemarchus jumps in, rescue his dad's definition. He says essentially, okay. Socrates, that's fine. So maybe justice isn't just paying your debts and telling the truth. Justice is doing good to your friends and harm to your enemies. Now, if you've ever met a younger person who's 100% certain they have the right answer, and if someone disagrees, they say things like, dang, how is that person so stupid? Geez, they're so lost. Well, maybe we shouldn't just be pinning that on the younger generation, the crazy uncle at holiday dinners or, family gatherings, or that politically, shall we say, energized person who is very, very tribal, very, very ideological. And well, that's kind of like our friend Polemarchus. He's got that, I'm right. I've always been right, and I will continue being right. So sad you're so wrong. And honestly, Polemarchus, though, back to his definition, it does, in a sense, kind of like Cephalus's, it seems intuitively sound. Doesn't sound like a terrible definition of justice, now does it? I mean, there could be worse definitions. It feels something like we nod along to today. Take care of your people. Protect your tribe. You help your own. And if someone messes with you or your tribe, well, mess back. Protect your own. It's justice as loyalty, or justice as team spirit, or justice as we're good, they're bad. Sound political there, doesn't it? Honestly, it's the moral logic of the most internet comment sections these days, or cable news programs. It's very tribal. So Socrates hears this and, well, starts that slow, gentle, devastating questioning he's famous for. He doesn't challenge with fists ever. He challenges with curiosity. Remember that. That's a great way to be. Be curious all the time. He asked Polemarchus, are we always correct? about who our true friends and enemies are? I mean, that's a big question, right? And Polemarchus, without missing a beat, says something like, well, yeah, pretty much we are. Because nothing says wisdom like the assumption that your judgments are flawless, right? In case you missed it, that was my sarcastic tone. Socrates keeps going. Is a friend someone who appears good or someone who is good? And now Polemarchus is hesitating a little bit. Never really thought about that distinction. Something that appears good versus what is good. And so Socrates pushes that knife in just a little bit more, just turn it just a little. Is it just to harm anyone? And then he pauses, and then he says, does harming a horse make it better or worse? Does harming a dog make it a better or worse dog? Does harming a human being make that person more just or more unjust? And now Polemarchus is kind of back on his heels here. He says, well, yeah, all of those, yeah, they would make that person worse. And then Socrates says, well, then justice cannot be harming people, not even if you call them an enemy. Good night, Polemarchus. This round goes to Socrates. But let's sit on that exchange for just 1 minute on justice, because there is a strong modern parallel that's emerging in our world today that mirrors Polemarchus' concept of justice. And it is disturbing, and it probably proves even more clearly why his definition of justice is not justice at all, and in fact is horrifically divisive. In our modern political sphere today, you're told, support your side no matter what. Doesn't matter how pathetic the candidate might be. The slogans rain down ideologically captured states. Like California, we hear the blue no matter who, blue no matter who, or on the right, anyone who deviates from the heart, from the MAGA agenda. Politicians, I mean, there's named literal people like Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're castigated as betrayers, fake, enemies of the republic, just because they question something Trump or MAGA are pushing for. And have all of them been ostracized and threatened to be primaried in their next election? Heck, Marjorie Taylor Greene already said, well, if this is the Republican Party, I'm out. I ran one term. See you later. See, when and if you believe your tribe is automatically right all the time, no matter what comes out in the opposition, it's fake news. It's a psyop. It's a deep fake. Even when the evidence is blatant and brutal in front of your face, anyone who disagrees with you is the enemy. Cancel them, drag them, shame them. If they're not with us, they're against us. Calls for violence leading to actual murders. Charlie Kirk being the latest, biggest figure to go down to the calls of hate. He was labeled a racist, a Nazi, a fascist. And of course, what should you do to a Nazi? Kill them. That would be justice. That would be the justice of Polemarchus. It is incredibly dangerous, this flirtation with tribal violence that's being portrayed as justice. So what Polemarchus was naively calling justice in his youth, and in his defense, being young like that, he couldn't go deeper, is a concept we see today where justice is political branding. It's internet tribalism. It's us versus them. It's high school cafeteria moral philosophy is what we're getting here from Polemarchus, and we see this in our own society today. So Socrates is saying this is not justice. No, 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 it's not. This is immaturity dressed up as morality. Justice, properly understood, cannot be reduced to loyalty or revenge or tribal membership. Justice is not my people good, your people bad. Justice has to be bigger than your social or your political circle, bigger than your team, bigger than hurt feelings, bigger than your enemies list. See, justice has to be concerned with the good, not your ego, not your tribe, not your side's talking points. So, Polemarchus eventually just quiets down, not because he's defeated personally, but because Socrates peeled back the layers of his moral assumptions and showed him that his definition it's too small. It's too reactive. It's too emotional. In Polemarchus's world, justice is basically be nice to the people I like, be a jerk to the people I don't, call it virtue. Sound familiar? Socrates dismantled it easily and elegantly. He said, a just person does not harm anyone because justice, being a virtue, cannot produce vice. A just person does not harm anyone because justice, being a virtue, cannot produce vice. Okay, so when you hear someone on the left or the right say something like, yeah, we might have done X this time, but remember last time the other side did Y. It would be good. It would be just. We all remember that justice cannot produce vice. The line is so important. It's a hinge. It's a moment when Plato stops showing us what justice isn't and starts clearing the ground for what justice might actually be in a supremely eloquent society. But before we get to that, we have to deal with a silverback gorilla that is still in this same room, because when Polemarchus falls silent, someone else rises, and he rises like a storm and like a threat, like a man who's been waiting to attack from the shadows. And the room shifts and the air thickens, and this voice, a very sharp, a very angry, a very impatient voice, breaks through the calm like lightning. And this is the moment the dialogue goes from polite philosophical dinner party to, oh hell, now things are getting real. It's time to meet Thrasymachus. And Thrasymachus believes one thing, that justice is just a rigged game. So Polemarchus, he doesn't leave, but he kind of retreats back into awkward silence, like, when you suddenly realize, like, oh no, boy, I sounded pretty simple and stupid there. When we all put our foot in our mouth and say something dumb and really wish maybe we would have stayed out of it. That's probably Polemarchus at this point. He's probably thinking, I don't really know what I'm talking about here. And honestly, that is a beautiful moment, really. That little death of certainty. That moment when the ego gets quiet enough for the mind to start learning. One can hope this lesson might just help Polemarchus realize he doesn't have it all figured out. This and a few more arrows of life happening, that'll all help him mature intellectually. But anyway, the silence, it doesn't last long, because there's a shape moving in the corner, a large shape, a shape with opinions, very sharp ones. And in a moment, that feels less like a philosophical dialogue and like a lion standing up in a crowded tent. And Plato actually says this in the book, that Thrasymachus, quote, coiled himself up and sprang forth like a wild beast. This is not the gentle elder Cephalus. This is not the enthusiastic but naive Polemarchus. This is a man built like he eats debate students for breakfast. His shoulders, they fill the doorway. His voice hits the room with a dropped anvil. I mean, you can practically hear the dramatic thud when he stands up. And when he finally speaks, he doesn't ask. He's not asking anything. He doesn't invite, he attacks. And he kind of growls out a response. He says, Socrates, stop all this nonsense. If you're so sure justice is something good, stop asking questions and tell us what you say justice is. This is such an iconic moment. It's practically a WWE square up when the combatants get face to face. The entire conversation tilts. Everyone in the room turns. And this is the philosophical equivalent of a bar fight about to break out. But through it all, Socrates remains incredibly calm. He's almost amused, really. See, as a side note, by this time in life, he's an old man, for sure. But the truth is, Socrates was a decorated Athenian hoplite, which would have been the equivalent of a heavy infantry soldier. He fought bravely in multiple major battles during the Peloponnesian War. Socrates was no stranger to combat and death. He had seen some stuff and most certainly had killed in combat. Now, of course, at this age, he's in no condition to physically fight Thrasymachus, but it isn't strange that Socrates could remain calm in the situation. But Thrasymachus was definitely aggressive, and he wasn't there to play Socratic games. He shows up to drop the hottest take and to win himself a little bit of intellectual fame by taking on and he's thinking taking down the great Socrates in verbal combat. So Thrasymachus, what's his definition? It's justice is a rigged game, and Thrasymachus delivers it with zero hesitation. And he says this quote, justice is nothing other than the advantage of the stronger. Boom, there it is. This is and becomes, throughout philosophical history, a baseline of the Cynic's creed. The worldview of every political operator, every tyrant, every mob boss, every corrupt CEO, every bureaucratic empire builder, every power-hungry social climber, every DEI critical race theorist, heck, every drug dealer and street thug. It's old school. You are either the taker or the sucker. Thrasymachus is saying justice is not real. Morality isn't real. Goodness isn't real. There's no higher truth, no virtue, no goodness. There's just winners and losers. Justice is whatever the people in power decide it is. If the rulers want a law passed, that law is just because they passed it. If the elite wants something to be moral, it becomes moral. Why? Because they said so. Truth is just propaganda with better branding. There is no justice. There's only power. Okay. I want to lean into this because modern listeners, you listeners out there, you can feel this in your bones, right? I feel it. We live in a world where distrust of institutions and of politicians and of people in power, whether they're in the business world, the political world, anywhere, we just don't trust them anymore. We see it all the time. We see corrupt politicians who never seem to face consequences. We see corporations bending laws they wrote for themselves. We see justice systems full of loopholes, plea deals, sweetheart settlements for billionaires. We see billionaires with flight logs that magically disappear into thin air. Oh, we know that one, right? The Epstein files. Agencies that claim transparency but redact everything. Universities that preach equality while protecting the powerful. Social media giants who decide what opinions may or may not exist and be seen. Political parties so captured by their extremes they compromise is seen as treason. Big pharma, big insurance saying they care about taking care of people while charging insane money that people can't afford. While so many suffer due to this lack of coverage or funds in the midst of billions of profit. I mean, I could just go on and on and on, and I'm sure you can come out with plenty of other examples on your own too. This is not an exhaustive list, but people feel the system is rigged. I feel it. We feel like pawns on a board someone else is playing many times. And so when Thrasymachus says, justice is whatever benefits the strong, many people nod. If they don't want to, I try not to be overly cynical, but heck, it's real hard to disagree with Thrasymachus here, right? Because it sounds like the world we live in today. A world where truth seems optional and power often seems absolute. Thrasymachus is the prophet of modern cynicism. Crazy this was in the 400 BCs. He says, don't be naive. There is no justice, Socrates. There is only winning. Thrasymachus, man, even when I read it, I'm still like, well, sadly, sure, sort of feels like it to me too. For many people, they would get a Baptist Bible thumping amen after hearing Thrasymachus deliver his version of justice. But Socrates listens carefully. And this is kind of where he shines. He doesn't shout. He doesn't posture. He doesn't flex his rhetorical muscles. He just questions. Always with humility, always with curiosity, always with that maddeningly calm tone that enrages people who are used to dominating a room. And Socrates asks this, tell me, Thrasymachus, when rulers make laws, are they infallible? Or are they always right? Thrasymachus hesitates. Only for a second, though. He knows the trap. He's seen Socrates enough. He's heard him now enough. He knows the trap is being built. He sees it, but he can't escape it. And he answers, no. Of course, rulers make mistakes. Socrates nods politely. So, when rulers do make mistakes and create laws that do not benefit them, are those laws still just? Thrasymachus falters, and I guess you could say theoretically, the beast stumbles, because if justice is always what the stronger wants, but the stronger sometimes don't get what they want, then the definition falls on itself. But Socrates isn't done yet. He pushes even further. He says, a true art is always aimed at the good of the thing that it serves. The doctor serves the patient. The captain serves his crew. So should not a ruler, if ruling is an art, serve the good of the people? This is the counterpunch. Socrates is saying this in more simple terms. Power that only benefits itself, it's not art, it isn't a craft, isn't noble, isn't just, isn't even good ruling. It's parasitism with a crown on. Now, again, to divert you for 1 second, this dialogue goes on more than what I'm going over here, and you should read the whole thing to see the artistic dissection line by line. But as we go through this first book, in the words of Plato, through Socrates' conversation, he wants to crack open your soul a bit with one simple question in this book. Why believe in justice at all? Because Thrasymachus really throws a hand grenade on the idea that justice even matters at all. But Socrates comes back that if the world is corrupt, if the system is rigged, if the powerful cheat and get away with it, why bother being just? I mean, it is a very brutal question. It's an uncomfortable one, but it is a valid question nonetheless. And we can't shy away from it, and we can't oversimplify it. Like Cephalus or Polemarchus, we have to take it head on. If the world is corrupt, if the system is rigged, if the powerful cheat and they always seem to get away with it, why even bother? Why should you and I care about being just? Why not become Thrasymachus? Why not grab what you want whenever you want it? Why not live by strength? Why not treat morality as branding, not truth? Here's why. Here's why. Because the stakes aren't just political. They're personal. They're internal. They're spiritual. A person who lives unjustly becomes deformed on the inside. They become corroded. They become twisted. They become hollow. You can feel this. You can see it in people. We've all met someone who, quote unquote, won externally while losing themselves internally. Justice matters because who you become is shaped by the principles you live by. And Plato through Socrates is arguing, you don't pursue justice because it's convenient. You pursue justice because it shapes you into someone capable of living a meaningful life. Justice is not a system. Justice is soul shaping. It creates internal harmony, strength, coherence, integrity. Who doesn't want to be remembered for that? Justice is what makes a person whole. I mean, really, if today I could give you power, money, prestige, esteem, but you have to give up the good and wholesome, loving relationships that you have in your life today, would you give it up for all those material things, for the power and the wealth and the money and the fame? And think about it. Let's say you did do it. You exchanged it all. You lost your family. You lost your friends. You lost everyone. What would your life be like? That's why justice matters. That's why the struggle for justice in yourself matters. That's why it's worth wrestling with. Because in the end, only you get to live with you until you die. And in the very, very end, when you look back on your life, it matters. It matters what you leave behind. That's your mark you leave on the world. Matters in whatever way you deem important in your world, your family, and your relationships, and your positive human impact on other people. They matter. They matter to someone. They matter because you do the right things, not because you can scare or beat someone into submission, but because it's just, it's the right thing to do. So book one ends like a movie that cuts to black just when the fight gets interesting. Socrates doesn't win. Thrasymachus doesn't win. They simply exhaust the easy definitions. And we went through 3 easy definitions in book 1, kind of clears the debris. Plato's preparing us for the real exploration in books 2 through 10. Book 1 is the demolition phase, the tear down, the excavation. And before you can build a cathedral, you have to remove the rubble. Plato wants you frustrated, really. He wants you hungry for more, wants you annoyed enough to keep going. And that's why the Republic is not just a book about justice. It's an invitation to rebuild your mind from the foundations up. And that journey is going to start in book 2. But for now, you've met the cast, you've walked into the ambush, you've survived Thrasymachus, you've seen why justice is not a political slogan, it's a personal survival strategy. So here we are, the end of book 1, Socrates sparring for what seems like hours. He's dismantled Cephalus, comforting morality. He's deflated Polemarchus's tribal morality. He's survived the intellectual bull rush of Thrasymachus's power morality. And you know what's wild? Socrates says it clear. He says this, quote, "But we still don't have a definition of justice. Not even close." And that is exactly what Plato wanted. Book 1 ends not with clarity, but with a philosophical dizziness. Like the lights have gone down and you're sitting there thinking, okay, wow, I thought I knew what justice was, and apparently I don't. Socrates even admits it. He says, quote, "I know nothing. We have accomplished nothing." And so that's the end of the conversation. Not real happy and airy, but he says it without despair, but with this almost mischievous twinkle, because here's the truth. Real thinking begins with answers. Real thinking doesn't begin with the answers. Real thinking begins with the collapse of your false certainty. So book 1 is supposed to unsettle you. It's supposed to shake your assumptions. It's supposed to knock down the mental furniture you don't even realize you'd been sitting on for years. It's the demolition phase. It's day 1 at the gym, the soreness, the confusion, the moment where your mind says, dang, I am way weaker and out of shape than I ever thought I was. And Plato smiles and says, yes, good. Now we can begin. So why the struggle with justice and why you have to. So let me just get personal here at the end. Why should you care about justice? Why wrestle with something so abstract? Why bother reading an ancient book full of dialogues that sometimes feel like they're written by a troll and they're hard to follow? And let me tell you why. Justice is not a political question. It's a personal question. It shapes every corner of your life. And you should understand these and think about them. It shapes how you treat people, keep promises, how you make decisions, how you handle power, how you restrain your impulses, how you speak, how you listen, how you build a life worth living. I mean, what else is there in a society that has trained us relentlessly to pursue comfort, pleasure, convenience, and entertainment? Justice actually is an antidote to this. Justice forces you to lift something heavy inside your mind, to take responsibility, to see clearly, to stop lying, especially to yourself. Justice is not about them. Justice is about you. And Plato says it plainly. You cannot be a whole human being without a concept of justice. You cannot be strong internally if your moral spine is gelatin. Thrasymachus says strength is dominating others. Socrates says no, strength is mastering yourself. And listen, that battle is relevant today as it was 2,400 years ago. We live in a world that rewards people for being loud, extreme, self-serving, performative, and tribal. But justice, real justice, requires inner discipline, honesty, humility, and discernment. That's the that's the way it works. These things can take time. These things are a struggle. Things take slowing down and thinking. So Socrates isn't trying to win an argument here. He's trying to build a human being. And book one ends with that tension. So Socrates and Thrasymachus, they don't shake hands and they don't walk away buddies. There's no sunset moment, no moral of the story music playing in the background. They end in disagreement, in conflict, in intellectual unease. But here's the magic. Your mind is now awake. You cannot unknow what you now know. You cannot go back to the easy definitions because they don't exist anymore. They've been destroyed. So Plato slams the book shut after book one and essentially says, good. You're unsettled. You're uncomfortable. You're paying attention now. Let's begin the work. So here's the teaser. This is what's coming next. In book two, we're going to meet a new guy, Glaucon. And he basically leans forward and says, all right, Socrates, enough warm up. I want the real answer. He doesn't want a definition anymore. He wants proof. He wants a story. He wants a city built from scratch that is just. A city in speech, a city in theory, so that he can see justice, not just talk about it theoretically. I guess it's almost like a philosophical version of Sim City game where you can build your own city from the ground up. So Socrates and his crew are going to build a majestically perfect city. And book two launches into this entire architect of the Republic. We're going to talk about the city of pigs, the guardians, the noble lie, the education of the soul, the tripartite site, the very foundations of justice, and eventually the allegory of the cave, and ultimately the very nature of reality itself. Book one is the doorway. Book two starts the journey, and now you are ready for it because you've met the voices. Tradition in Cephalus, loyalty in Polemarchus, cynicism in Thrasymachus, and philosophy in Socrates. So the whole drama is on the table, but the real republic, the one that shapes entire civilizations, begins in book two. So take a breath. If you haven't read book one, go read it. If you read it once and you're like, I didn't even get hardly any of that, go back, reread it. We're in no rush here. I'm in no rush with you. Take as much time as you need. These podcasts are always available. You can grab the next one right after. It's no big deal. But let that soreness settle in and drink some water, stretch that, some water, coffee, whatever you want. Stretch that brain a little. The next episode, we break open Plato's real project. So it's a lot, I know. And here's the thing. Take it slow. Take it very slow. I want you to take this in deeply. Reread or read book one, as I said, before you move on. I've read this book multiple times and it's still a hard and challenging read. So if you feel overwhelmed, it's actually pretty normal. That's the key. The key in this study and what I want you to get from it is just to keep pushing yourself. Because if you can and you do, I promise you, by the end, your eyes are going to open up. And if the reading is hard and it's don't try and get every word, every sentence, every line. Just read it through, grab what you can. And I guarantee you, the more you read Plato and the more you get used to how these dialogues function, you're going to get better and better. You're going to retain more and more. But you have to push through the hard parts. That's why we're doing this. It is hard. But keep working at it. You can do it. So until the next episode, I hope you'll share this. I hope you'll follow this. Also in the notes, there's a link to my Substack page where I actually there's some writing and deeper conversations on that. It's also 100% free. I invite you to subscribe to that Substack page so that you're on it and you'll be made aware every time something new pops up in regards to this series. So have a look at that as well. But other than that, until the next episode, keep working at it. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care.